The power of choice. Spoiler alert. Joseph forgives his brothers. My first impression of this passage, not unlike my first take on some other Torah portions, was, give me a break. Those of you who know me very well know that I can get pretty angry, and when it comes to carrying a grudge, I'm kind of like an elephant. I never forget. But since we're in classes with the rabbi, I felt obligated to think about this passage some more. And we see that Joseph is initially angry with his brothers. He speaks harshly and tells them they are spies. But something happens. Joseph hears Reuben's regret, as Reuben says, "Did I not tell you? Do no wrong to the boy. But you paid no heed. Now comes the reckoning for his blood." And Joseph turns away and wept. And later, when he sees his brother Benjamin, he hurries out, for he was overcome with feeling towards his brother and was again on the verge of tears. And later still, his sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear. As you know, Joseph then reveals himself to his brothers. He does not say how horrible or evil you are. He does not banish or imprison them, but rather says, "Now, do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you, to ensure survival on earth," and tells them, "You will be near me. There I will provide for you." And with that, he embraced his brother Benjamin around the neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept upon them, and only then were his brothers able to talk to him. Wow. Surely we could argue with Joseph's interpretation, the choice that he made. Was he right, or was he wrong? But maybe that's not the point. In making this choice to interpret the events as the will of God and forgive his brothers, he is reunited with them. They sob in reunion, they sob in love, and they banish their anguish. This is the power of choice. Of course, we see things that speak to us, and this story speaks to me. As some of you know, I lost my mom last year. After a series of medical complications, she reached that point in life where death was truly inevitable. But unfortunately for me, she was not in our hospital where my friends and colleagues and her physician would have cared for her in the true sense of the word and guided her passage. No, she was in another hospital where she would not get the kind of care I know she wanted and that I wanted for her. And so at her request, I made the choice to make sure she did not suffer. I managed her morphine drip. And when she was unconscious and not suffering, and then I, her only son, the doctor, withdrew the medical support that kept her alive, and I, the only person awake in the room, watched her die. My choice. For over a year, I grieved for her loss, and I carried such shame, almost unbearable shame, that I had helped my mother die. But then with the help of others, I too made choices. I chose to remember that she did not suffer, that my pain allowed her to die peacefully as she'd wanted. I chose to appreciate that her death allowed my sister to attend to her ailing children when they needed her. And I chose to ponder what her death had taught me, even more about my patients and how to care for them than I knew before, and about how even long lives are too short at the end, and about the stupidity of one of our most common habits to ask those we know, "How old was your loved one who died?" as if that matters in the least to them. And I chose to reconnect to my religious background, come back to temple to learn and get solace. And through this choice, I have learned much. I take note in my grandfather's 1950s prayer book that we are instructed to open our eyes to the nobility of life and our opportunity for service. And I try to use this every day in my work. I'd like to share with you another story of choice. Years ago, I cared for a really remarkable man, maybe the most remarkable I've ever known. He had 3 cancers in his life, and the last cancer spread, and after many experimental therapies, it became clear that we had nothing left to offer him. Fortunately, he had a lot to offer himself. You see, he lived near me, and so from time to time, I would stop by his house on the way home. And each time I would find him sitting in his living room or his bedroom, kibitzing with his family and his friends, passing on advice or just having fun. And after a while, I realized how surprised I was. Here he was dying, and yet he was okay. In fact, he was still living. And so I asked him, "How is it that you're okay?" And he looked at me and said, "Scott, my life has really been wonderful. My job was so much more than I dreamed of. My family has been wonderful, and I am just grateful for the life that I've had." And so despite dying in his early 70s, he made his choice and lived life to the fullest until the very end. And what a powerful choice that was. And so to me, the story of Joseph is not that we can control our lives. Horrible things happen, and sometimes they are so hard to overcome, nearly impossible. And I can't imagine some losses that will be impossible for me to overcome. But while we can't choose what will happen to us, with effort and help, we can often choose what comes next. Like my patient and like Joseph, if we can work through our grief, our frustration, our hate, we can choose how we move forward, at least sometimes. And maybe this is man's most special gift, that which separates us from the animals and the machines. And perhaps the greatest choice we have to make is a spiritual one. We have a choice to view this world as one with or without God. And perhaps there is no God. Perhaps a series of random events led to life and then evolution to us. Such a choice could free us from some of the obligations that we may feel religion poses on us, but it also leaves us alone. Another choice, a different choice, sees a world created by God, associated with purpose, and we as agents of that purpose to fulfill some divine peace in this grand scheme, no matter how small. That choice does create obligations, but also purpose, belonging, a sense of being part of the whole. Our choices define us. They can comfort us or ruin us. They can guide us or leave us empty. The choice is ours. Shabbat Shalom.